Start. Welcome everybody. Great to see so many of you coming back. So today we're going to be three of us on the call, which you'll probably have seen the three of us already. There's me on the left, and obviously I've been here the whole way through, and I'm leading on the program, so I'm kind of overseeing this training program. So if you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask me about that. And we've got Jane joining us today. Jane, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Jane Chambers. I am a graduate from cohort 4, so quite a while ago. Currently, I'm head of strategic corporate and community fundraising. But when I started with the demand and capacity team, I was in adult medicine and then moved into cancer services. And I have used the tool, so I am going to be quite interested in sharing and hearing some of your fears, anxieties, and high points.
And we've also got Paul joining us today, who some of you will remember from module 2, 3, one of the previous modules, but he's also helping us out in the Slido stuff. Do you want to say a quick hello, Paul?
Yeah, just good morning, everyone. Sorry for spamming your chat with the attendance link. Just trying to make sure everyone gets it. But yeah, no, really looking forward to the session. Me and Jane were on the same cohort when we was going through the trainer program. So yes, very, very excited to hear what she's been up to.
Thank you, both of you. And also, Paul, you might also recognise from doing one of the walkthroughs last week. So for those of you who joined the walkthroughs, Paul's one of the people who led that. And I'm sure if there are questions, technical questions around the model, Paul will be happy to help us out with that as well. So in terms of our agenda today, we're going to be looking at the model outputs. So not so much looking at the numbers. I think the model walkthroughs and either the online one, if you've done that, or if you dialed in last week, we look at the numbers there. But I suppose this is more about the so what question. So you do this work, you do all of the kind of background detective stuff, you figure out what you're going to put into the model, you look at your SPC chart, you verify it, etc. And then this is a little bit more about looking beyond the numbers. So Jane's going to share some of her experiences about that. And we're also going to ask you to do a bit more of the interactive questions on Slido in terms of where you're at and how things are going with your projects. But it is about that bigger question of what do you do with the outputs rather than how do you get the outputs. So we'll have a bit of feedback from Jane in terms of this, and then a bit from you as well in terms of where you're going. And then as ever, we've got some time for questions and answers, and we'll be looking at what next in the course, but also what next for you in your journey. So if you haven't done already, oh, I've got a bit of echo somewhere. Paul, can you mute whoever is? Oh no, it's gone. For those of you who haven't done already, can you join Slido? So this is our Slido QR code for this week. I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to join it now, but you can do it two ways. It's either web browser or on your phone, and we'll be using it for our first question. So first question is already live and it's probably quite familiar to you now. It's the how are you question. So on the emoji face spectrum, I feel like we should have added these ones in and these ones maybe next time. How are you today? How is the day taking you? I'll just have a little look at Paul, can you share the results? Oh, good's coming out strong. That's what I like to see. I always think it's encouraging that hungry isn't higher. I think that's a good sign. Jane, where would you put yourself on the scale today?
Oh, I've put myself as good. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a definite solid favourite there. few tired, few so-so. 6% super. That has made my day. So yeah, a solid good in the lead with a bit of okay and tired and so-so mixed in. Good. So we're nearing the end of the course now. We're on module 6, and we've got the last one next week, which is when we're going to be looking at COVID. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the mentoring sessions. So we've mentioned them a few times as we've gone through, and I think, I'm not sure if we've got Joe on the line today. We've started delivering the mentoring sessions now. I don't think many people have had a chance to do theirs yet, but the sign up, actually, Paul, can you pop that in the chat if you haven't done already? Do have a think about mentoring sessions. So I think we're going to be reflecting quite a bit today on the journey and how it works and what you do with the outputs afterwards. It is one of those things that varies quite a lot from project to project or person to person. So the mentoring sessions really are there to help you and support you to unpick whatever might be a barrier for you, if there is anything, or even just to sense check your thinking. So just as a reminder that they're there. We've got sessions that are, I think, going until at least the week after the last webinar. So I know a few people said they wanted to do the last webinar before they booked in a session because they wanted to talk about the kind of COVID impact, and that's absolutely understandable. So just have a little think about whether you want to do one of those sessions. What we would ask is that you give us a little summary of what it is you want to cover. So we have staff kind of booked in and available for each of those sessions that that you book into. But if there is a particular area that you're asking about that someone in the team is a bit of an expert on, we'll try and switch people around so that you get those people that are particularly working in those areas. So the more heads up you can give us in terms of the area that you want to discuss, the more likely it is that you'll have the person in the team who's the real expert on that area. So just as a little kind of nudge in that direction to let us know your thinking. And so now I will hand over to Jane, who's just going to talk us through a little bit about her experiences and her demand capacity journey. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you very much, Alice. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be in a virtual room with so many people that are undertaking what I can only class as an invaluable piece of work. Now, when I first joined demand and capacity training, for me, it initially started with being bombarded with lots of IT techie stuff. Now, I'm a bit of an old bird, and I don't mind saying that. And I grew up pre-IT techie stuff. So for me, there was a lot of, this is just numbers. Why do I need numbers? These are numbers. I don't like numbers. And I went through a few of the sessions thinking, is this really for me? And how is it going to help my business? And I do recall being on the course with Paul when I had my eureka moment, because this isn't just numbers. I had to equate these numbers to human beings for it to make sense to me, and how what I was doing was going to help the human beings under my care. And that wasn't just patients, that was colleagues, my clinicians, my nurses, the people I worked with, the people that some seemed to be sweating and working really, really hard, and others seemed to be breezing through life with very, very small clinics. So as I started using the tool and populating the tool, that allowed me to highlight some significant areas of improvement, not just, as I said, for my patients, but also for my clinical staff as well. We were in a period where we were working through RTT, where we had people, clinicians asking for waiting list initiatives. They were being signed off. We had other clinicians that didn't need waiting list initiatives. So it helped to understand what my business, or what was happening with my business. So during the process, I was moved into cancer services to manage that department. And I started using the tool to help me look at my particular tumour sites. I had some tumour sites that were overperforming and achieving the national standard of 85%, some at 100%, and others that were just simmering down at 30, 40%. And it seemed that every month my target was being achieved by specific departments that were always achieving. So this helped, by doing this demand and capacity, it helped me to focus on the departments that weren't achieving. And one of the specific departments that I focused on first was our urology teams, because they were always bubbling around the 40% mark. So with some investigations, we were able to see that there were some definite constraints within the system, especially around the reliance on diagnostics to move a patient forward, the reliance on having to see specific clinicians because they were the particular clinicians that would do that surgery. We understood that patients had a choice on where and what treatment they wanted, especially when they were diagnosed with prostate cancer. There was several different treatments that we could do for those patients, and some of those relied on us using tertiary centres for radical robotic prostatectomies. So certain things were out of our sphere of control, but a lot of things were in what we could control and improve. So we started working with the service managers, showing them the evidence that was produced from filling out our demand and capacity. From that information, we were then able to build a business case to support going to one-stop clinics. This all took time. It didn't happen overnight, but it happened with perseverance, with dialogue, with engaging with the right people. And it's about engaging with the right people that really, really brings this tool alive, because it allows you to have meaningful conversations. It allows you to show evidence-based information. Well, actually, you've got this clinician that's squeezing in X amount of patients, and you've got this clinician that is not working to full capacity. So not only does it enable you to model your demand and your capacity, it helps you with job planning, and it helps you build business cases. So with the business case that we built, we were able to employ more clinicians, run a 7-day service, because actually that's what the demand dictated. A lot of our DNAs, if you think that prostate cancer starts in a working age group, and some of our working age group are self-employed. So we had a lot of DNAs with certain age groups that when we moved them over to weekend clinics, those do not attend dropped. So we were able to see more people, we were able to treat more people, and we were able to influence the outcomes for those patients, but also for our national standard. So we moved urology 62-day service from a 40% up to a 98% at its highest target, which was phenomenal. And we became, I think, probably for that tumour site, the top performing organisation in the country. And we had a lot of local hospitals asking us how we'd achieve that performance. But as I said, this wasn't about numbers. This was about doing the best for our people. Because the numbers by themselves to me didn't mean anything. But when I started equating those numbers to the human factor, and actually that wasn't just a patient that DNA'd, that wasn't just someone that we couldn't get into clinic, that was somebody's husband, it was somebody's wife, it was somebody's dad, it was somebody's granddad. It made it all the more powerful for me. And I know that won't work with everybody. I know some people, Paul, really love numbers, but I really love people. So I had to switch things around. And that's when I had my light bulb moment with how demand and capacity can support a team to become even better. So we've now moved through that. We've got our one-stop service. We are recruited clinician-wise to what we need to deliver that service. We've had that little bug that's been involved. You know, I don't know if you've heard COVID, that had an impact on lots of things. But it's then the recovery of what we do. And that tool is pretty much embedded within the urology team that allows them to use that information to recover from the impact of COVID. So it's been really nice to see that what we could influence, we've been able to influence, but it's also meant that we could focus really on those things that we could change for the betterment of our patients. It caused a lot of work, you know, with people phoning up. What have you done? How have you done it? We were highlighted as a team working together through our magazine that goes out to a lot of our public, a lot of our governors, a lot of the board. And it just shows the power of working when you understand what drives your people. Clinicians are very evidence-based. They like to see what you're proposing is going to have an impact. And when they start working with that and see the impact, they're more hungry to find those things out, and they're more hungry to be able to continue to do those things. It wasn't easy. So if there's some of you out there that's thinking, oh my God, this is so difficult, or this is hard, or this is taking up a lot of my time, the benefits far outweigh the investment that you do now. So I would say carve yourself out a little bit of time. If you're working from home and you have the resources in a nice, quiet environment, you can create and achieve a lot more, because you're not being disturbed and pulled into different things. But make those bonds with the people that early adopt with you, because they're the ones that are going to influence the people that are taking a little bit longer to come on this journey of discoverment with you, because it is about discovering. It is about really looking down. And when you use the SPC charts, which we've adopted as an organisation for pretty much everything these days, it just shows you instantly, you can see that Christmas is going to come and you're going to see a drop in people not coming to clinics. Easter, you're going to see a drop. With skin cancer, you'll see a hike in April, and it allows you to plan your activity around those peaks and troughs that are national trends. Blood in Pea campaign, I think, is on the telly at the moment. So we know that there'll be an impact in people coming in to see us because they've had blood in their pea. There'll be the other blood in the other bit. That'll be coming soon, and if it hasn't already. And this just allows you, if you're aware of those peaks and troughs and can assimilate them to what's causing them, that allows you to support your demand and your capacity all over again and make your service really, really tight. Alice and I were talking before, and very rarely do we as NHS professionals look on things as our business. But if we were owning our own business, we'd want to know what the demand and the impact is going to be on our capacity. You wouldn't run a business yourself if you didn't have that basic level of knowledge. So give yourself the opportunity to be and be fascinated by what you find out, because as you start digging, all these little golden nuggets, these light bulbs, these amazing things will come up and appear to you, and you'll go, oh my God, yes, I can change that. Or actually, whose support do I need to change that? And having executive buy-in is absolutely crucial. We're quite lucky in our organisation where the chief exec is very much demand and capacity based. So we've been really, really lucky. But don't give up, even if you feel you're behind other people. I think when I was in my cohort, I was well behind a lot of other people because they were numbers people. They'd got it straight away. But it took me a little bit longer. But I didn't want to give up, because when I realised that this was going to help somebody's mum, somebody's dad, somebody's loved one, it made it more important to me as an individual. So find your driver, find what's going to keep you curious, and keep working on it. I think that's all I need to say, Alice.
Thank you very much, Jane. Does anyone have any questions for Jane? Do you want to pop them in the question bit of Slido? Or if there are any that you kind of feel like it'd be easier to say, feel free to use the little hand up function if it works for you, because again, that's one that chooses its day when it's going to cooperate or not. And we can just take unmuted questions as well. So thank you very much, Jane. I love hearing about the work that you do. I love hearing about the work that all the graduates do. I've got a little comment as well. And I've seen, talking of comments, I saw in the chat box that there was a question around the Train the Trainer programme. You will probably have noticed that quite a few people who have been speaking on this course have been on the Train the Trainer programme. And someone was asking whether we're going to be running it again. We're looking at running it again. At the moment, we're debating exactly what format it should be in. So the course that Jane did and Paul did, and I did as well, actually, and David did, and anyway, a few other people, Lilu. The course that we did ran over 6 months. We demanded quite a high level of commitment from the person who's going to be on the course, as well as their line manager and an executive sponsor. So we really recognise that having that really high commitment and high level of engagement was crucial for people to be able to make the most of the course. However, in a COVID context, we don't feel like it's reasonable to expect the same commitment in the same way. And at the moment, we're just rethinking how that could work. So I suppose the answer is yes, I hope we will be delivering it again in the future, but it might be slightly different format. And I think it's unlikely that we will be delivering the Train the Trainer course before spring at the absolute earliest. And it might be later than that again, just in terms of being realistic. So if you are interested in that, please do sign up to our newsletter. We will be sure to shout from the rooftops when people are able to sign up again. But I suppose I'm just trying to warn you that it probably won't be very soon. However, if you are wanting to really kind of develop those skills and look at going to the next step, let us know, sign up for a mentoring session. As a team, we're very happy to support people who are trying to do similar sorts of work. But I think we just need to be realistic. The course probably isn't going to be running again, probably at least another 6 months, I would say. But we will keep you posted via the newsletter. And Steve, yeah, I'm absolutely with you. Jane, what an inspiration.
We've had a couple of questions in on Slido. So Jane, I'm just going to ask you a couple of these questions. So for someone, someone's asked, for someone that is also struggling to digest the numbers and the models, where do you suggest starting?
Start with the end in mind. What do you want to find out? What do you want the numbers to tell you? And what is it that you're trying to do? Don't go into this blindly and just populate information. What is it that you want to get at the end? Are you looking at job planning? Are you looking at your clinic capacity? Are you looking to change your service? Because all this information will support you. Get in touch with your business analyst in your analytical department, because they'll be able to support you with some of the information. They won't populate it for you, I've found, from prior experience, but that's probably not what you want them to do anyway. So start making friends, start talking with people, and understand what you want the outcomes to show you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. And a second one. First of all, sounds like a great example. Can I ask how easy or difficult it was to switch staff to 7-day working?
In our organisation, our urologists are actually quite phenomenal. I'm really, really proud to say that it wasn't that difficult. The urology nurse specialists were always willing to support our patients and the service. So it didn't take a lot to convince them, especially when you show them the evidence. These people are of a working age and they're DNA in. And it was almost about saying, well, we've built this service, but it's not meeting your patient's requirements. And when you start using language like your patients and your service, and this is your business, they start to think very, very differently. And it allows you sometimes to challenge behaviors that don't always work for your business. So yeah, they came on board relatively quite easily, which I was expecting a lot of resistance, but I didn't get it, because they were reignited with the results that they were seeing and the praise that they were getting, both locally and nationally, because they went to the national urology summits for cancer and people were, oh, so Mr. So-and-so, how were you doing that? And Mr. So-and-so, how did you achieve that? So there was a lot of kudos given back to the consultants. And if there's any consultants on here, I'm going to apologise in advance, but they do like a little bit of schmoozing. You know, tea and biscuits. Oh my goodness, you're so wonderful for doing that for us. But it's positive affirmation in a different way. We all like to be praised for doing things well, but it was the outcomes and the outputs and the pride of what they were able to deliver as a service to the patients under their care at sometimes the most difficult times. Does that answer that?
I think so. That sounds really, really good. I'd also just say that if you're struggling with your data analysts and getting them to get some data, they like a bit of schmoozing as well. A bit of biscuits for data analysts. That was the way to get it for me. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jane. Do keep your questions coming in on Slido, and we can always pose them to Jane as we go throughout the rest of the session as well. Back to you, Alice.
Brilliant. And in that case, if we haven't got any other questions right now, it's over to a question for you guys. So what for you has been your golden nugget? Jane's talked a little bit about her eureka moments and her like, okay, this is why it makes sense to me. And we just wanted you to reflect a bit on this course, but probably more importantly, the projects that you are working on and that you're trying to implement in your own organisations, or even just any of the speakers that we've had over the last 7 weeks. So yeah, if you can go on to Slido, and we want to know for you guys, what's been that golden nugget or that aha moment? I was going to say, Jane, in terms of the 7-day working, I would I would suspect that because you are so patient focused, actually that will have really spoken to a lot of clinicians. So it's that kind of purpose and motivator that people have, like people are motivated by a whole range of things, but I can see that would probably be one that would resonate with a lot of clinicians.
Yeah, but again, as I said, clinicians do tend to, although they're people-based, they do like things underpinned with facts. And if you show them the facts, they can very rarely turn around and say, that's not true. You know, and it's just so important that you have the quantitative and the qualitative information so that you can give it to them. And just by questioning, I always like to use the phrase, can you help me understand? Because that puts them in power to support you with what you're asking. We had one particular patient who not only had a cancer diagnosis, a urological cancer diagnosis, but the patient was also living with dementia. And they wanted to bring him in for another scan, which would delay his treatment. So I had to ask that clinician, can you help me understand why we're bringing this patient back in before his treatment? I know that you've seen something else in another part of his body, but is it going to change the outcome of the treatment that you're going to give him, in line with the fact that this gentleman is 85 years old, living with dementia? You're going to take him out of an area that he's familiar with, bring him into a busy waiting room to do what? Help me understand what that's going to be. And the clinician was able to articulate back to me, well, it's not going to change the treatment that we're going to give him. I said, so help me understand why you're bringing him back. To the point was, well, actually, we don't need to. So we were able to not bring that patient in and take him out of his environment that he's familiar with, but we were able to save an appointment as well and use that for somebody that would really need it, that would benefit from it more. So it's always a good phrase.
Looking at the word cloud, patient is definitely coming out big and bold.
Yeah.
So patient-centered, patient outcomes.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's easy to sound a bit trite, but I also think it's true. I don't think anyone starts working for the NHS without caring about patients. I think often, so I don't interact with patients directly, but it's why I do my job. There are some other kind of bits that have come up. So evidence-based approach, impact on the patient, making a difference.
My favourite, theory of constraints. I love that.
I'm a big fan of the theory of constraints. Have you read The Goal?
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
It's a hilarious book. I mean, yeah, it's very much of its time, but the theory is absolutely sound.
Eli Goldratt, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Then we've got mean versus percentiles, impacting differences. And then we've got centiles over averages, which I presume is percentiles. I presume there's a bit that's been cut off there. Details are important.
Yeah. Impacting different, keep patient at focus. Yeah. Helping the cause. We all like a cause, don't we?
And as Jane said, I would encourage all of you to try and hang on to this. Maybe put it on a post-it note if you're in an area where you can put post-it notes, because as Jane said, when you are finding that you're struggling or that it's difficult, being able to focus on these things can really help to get you through it, and to kind of really focus on what it is that you're wanting that end point to be. And also, I mean, going back to what we talked about in that very, very first webinar in this series, having a really clear idea of what your question that you're trying to answer is. and having a clear idea of what you want to get out of the process means you're far, far more likely to achieve what you're setting out to do if you're really clear on it.
When I worked in retail, we used to have a phrase, and it was called "the devil is in the detail." So when you are filling out your demand and capacity, remember that, because the more detail you put in, the better information you will have come out. And don't be afraid to come away from it and go back into it. You don't have to do it all in one go. Keep chipping away at it. And as I said, the more you put in, the better quality information that you get out to be able to do all these amazing things for your patients.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next Slido question now, if we can. Thank you very much, Paul. So for you each individually or in your groups, if you're working together, what do you think is going to be the next step on your demand and capacity journey? So we've tried to structure this course in a way that you can follow through and kind of implement the theory in your projects, but everybody's going to be working on something different. Everyone's going to have a different next step. So understanding the demand properly. Yeah, absolutely. And as Jane said, in a business, you would never try and run a business without understanding what your demand is. Building confidence through the use of the tools. So that's an interesting one. I'd be interested to know whether you're wanting to build your own confidence or whether you're wanting to build other people's confidence in the tools. Understand patient flow. Are there any that are jumping out for you, Jane?
It's identifying the priority for your service to focus on, and that will help build confidence, because you'll see the impact that that will have, especially if you've got willing victims, as in, you know, your teams and things like that. And once you see that, that boosts the confidence to continue. When I delivered some training sessions, we did have some negative Nellies, I won't lie, but focus on those that are engaged, and you'll see from the body language that they're engaged and their questions. So keep focusing on them, because, you know, the change curve, you're always going to have some people that are never going to be on board. Don't waste your energy. Focus on the ones that are there first off, and the ones that you can see will be influenced by the people that have engaged first time. So yeah, putting it into practice, that's a good one. Clear outputs.
I saw something about commissioners and persuading commissioners. I know we have a few commissioners on this. Here we go. Convincing, persuading commissioners to trust the outputs. I know we have a few commissioners who are doing this course. It'd be really interesting for you if you could put in what would help to convince you. So what would you want to see to feel like you are confident in somebody's demand capacity modeling? Because I think that dynamic and that relationship is really, really vital for realistic change happening.
I like this one, building confidence, my own as a leader to then influence others. That's lovely, because I was in that boat. And it's learning. The NHS is very good at having its own language. So it's using that language with confidence. You don't have to know all the answers. You can always come back to people and say, I'll take that away with me and I'll find out for you. Be kind to yourself. You're not expected to have all the answers straight away, even as a leader. Your positivity will influence those that are around you.
Yeah. We've got here overview of the complex model for mental health provision. So I know that there was an ask for us to do a walkthrough of the high complexity model. We're very happy to do that, and we'll see if we can put that in place. It will probably be after the last module. It'll be kind of in that week where we're doing mentoring sessions, but we'll post it onto the Future NHS site when it's available. And in the meantime, if you have got a mentoring session booked in and you're wanting to talk through the high complexity model, just let us know and we'll make sure someone who knows the ins and outs of it is on that call with you.
Oh, look at that one, Alice. Build a business case supported by evidence of demand. Yes.
Music to my ears.
I'm very excited. Read the goal. Definitely.
It's surprisingly light reading. It's one of those ones that, well, I mean, okay, so caveat, the book is quite physically heavy. I tried to read it on the tube and it was a bit heavy to carry around in my bag all the time, but the writing style is quite easy. So yeah, it's one that I would encourage people to have a go at. And you can buy it. I know we talked about it when we did the theory of constraints. You can buy it secondhand quite cheaply, so don't worry about buying it new because it can be quite expensive. There's loads of secondhand copies kicking about. Oh, so here we go. As a commissioner, I would like to see evidence in business cases of D&C modelling that's being done, not the detail, but enough to show evidence that a process has been followed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's the case for a lot of people, to be honest. I think that's a really nice summary of exactly, yeah, what people are wanting. It's assurance, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And going back to the goal, if you're working in an organisation that has a library, your library can also buy it in or get it in if they haven't got a copy already. That's what I did.
Yeah, we've got like 2 team copies that get handed around. More learning is an interesting one. So if you are willing to do so, please do let us know if there's anything that you would like to see in support from us in terms of what that more learning could look like. Everything's changing so fast at the moment and we're trying to make sure that our training offer is really fit for purpose. So do use the evaluation feedback at the end and let us know what that might look like and what you'd find helpful to help support that. Main obstacle is that senior leaders don't have confidence that the NHS can undertake this work strategically. They keep hiring expensive external consulting to do this work badly. I feel that. I absolutely feel you on that. What we are hoping to start doing is more engagement directly with boards to try and help and mitigate that a little bit. But I think you're absolutely right to identify it, that sometimes there can be this misunderstanding that you have to get someone in externally and they're not really always valuing that internal expertise. Jane, you've done quite a bit of engagement with your board, haven't you?
Yeah, as I said, we've been quite lucky in our organisation in the fact that our chief exec absolutely understands the importance of demand and capacity. So he's been really, really supportive. So it is about getting buy-in from the top, because if you've got that level of buy-in, then you won't have the same constraints that you would otherwise. But again, it's about using your powers of influence to bring those people on the journey with you, because you're all powerful influencers, otherwise you wouldn't be where you are now. It's just using that influence and doing a bit of schmoozing, taking the tea and biscuits, not cheap old nasty ones, decent ones, and sitting down and explaining to people what it is that you're wanting to achieve for your organization and your community. Because if you create that, it's our organization, it's our community. Why do we not want it to be the best that it can be? And using specific language and emotive language can really bring people on board.
Yeah.
And don't ever give up. Keep banging the drum.
And I would say turn to each other as well. So if you're kind of doing it on your own in your organization, find someone from another organization that you can buddy up with and share ideas with, but also share frustrations with, and share when you win something. And having that sort of peer support can make a massive, massive difference. So yeah, I would really encourage people to connect up with each other. And yeah, this one here, emphasizing that demanding capacity isn't just an exercise and has values if it's interpreted and acted on correctly. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to move us on to our third and final question for you guys. And we will obviously answer questions you asked us as well. But what does your finish line look like? So again, going back to what we were saying, that sometimes having that goal in sight can help get you through the trickier bits or the sludgier bits. What does the finish look like for you? And it will be different for different people, but having that clarity of what your success is going to look like, as I said, it cannot overstress how much of a difference it makes to your likelihood of achieving it.
I think it's about starting with the end in mind, isn't it?
Patient pathway flow from referral to treatment. And that's hopefully one that again, it's nice to have something really specific like that, because then you know when you've got it. I think sometimes unintentionally we can move our own goalposts because we're always wanting it to be more and more and more. I saw you reacting to one there, Jane. What's jumping out at you?
It's the, let's just take that away. It's effective use of limited resources. You know, give people the permission, allow them to have the time to do what they need to do. Because if you can do that, those limited resources will have a big impact. D&C activities resulting in a positive change. Absolutely. Never undertake anything if it's not going to have a positive change. Nothing, there is no finish line in the world of continuous improvement.
Yeah. And I think that's true in lots of ways. And I think that's what I meant by that. You can move your own goalposts, but try and make sure that you celebrate moving past them. So when you get to one of your first goalposts, even though you may then be setting yourself another one, because you are right, continuous improvement is always going to be ongoing, but try and celebrate those successes as you go past them.
Absolutely, you know, because success breeds success, and that's how you'll get continuous improvement, because people will see and want to build on that success. You know, it's a bit like marathon runners, I've heard. I'm not a marathon runner.
Bed readily available when a client needs admission. I don't know about anyone else, but that speaks to my heart, that sentence.
And again, it's aligning the services, isn't it? You know, nobody wants to think of their relative not being able to get into a bed of any age.
D&C planning being embedded as custom practice within the organisation. Yeah, and that's that real cultural shift, isn't it? It's the seeing the value in it and people choosing to do it. Having a manageable, healthy patient tracking list that efficiently supports patient pathways, access to services, whilst it reduces pressure on workforce, chasing potential breaches continuously.
I feel your pain on that one, but we were able to have a very manageable PTL. And when I first started in cancer services, one of the big things that I noticed was that our service managers could articulate tooth and nail all of their patients on their referral to treatment PTL, but not on their cancer PTL. So we simplified the PTL. We had meetings with them on a weekly basis, the service manager, the MDT coordinator, and myself, because I would then be able to escalate any problems. And within weeks, they knew all of their cancer patients as well. So that was amazing.
Use the information from D&C to make tangible improvements. Absolutely.
good understanding of where the constraints are. But remember, when you unblock one constraint, you will automatically find another one. So it's about continually unblocking those constraints. And as your service improves, the constraint that you unblocked at the beginning may become another one further on down the line. So yeah, and it's an exciting time. Be fascinated. That's what I keep saying, fascinated about what you find out.
Just accepting demand and capacity report and recommendation. Absolutely. That's that working together bit, isn't it?
Mm.
I was also going to say, if you have any questions for Jane or Paul or myself, you should be able to on Slido toggle between the question and answer bit and the active poll. So if there is anything you're wanting to pop into the questions, we can start answering those in a bit as well. But yeah, I think the accepting the outputs is a really big part of that cultural piece and that people engagement. Ownership by the department to be motivated to continually improve. I feel like, Jane, that's a bit of your specialism, really.
Yeah, show if they can't deny what you show them, you know, and it is about using the language that motivates other people. As I said, when I first came into this and it was all numbers, I'm probably the most demotivated person in the room by the numbers, but motivated by the fact of what this could do for my patients. So use the language, and I'm going to use a strange phrase now, use the language to turn them on, get them excited, get them wanting more, because as I said, success breeds success and everybody loves success. FFT results. What's FFT?
FFT. Paul, do you know what the FFT is?
Friends and family.
Ah,
Friends
friends and family
test.
test.
Yes, it will. Absolutely.
Oh, and that last one, getting everyone to be as positive as engaging as Jane. I am with you on that. If we could just have like a whole army of Janes, that would be great.
It's my current boss on my one-to-one sat down and he just said to me, he said, I don't know how you do it, Jane. He said, I don't know how you manage to galvanize so many people into doing what you need them to do. I went, I just talk to them. And wet dog.
Oh, I don't think you've explained wet dog in this one.
So back in the day, what's Hugh's surname?
McCorkey.
I had the absolute honour of doing a presentation in front of Hugh McCorkey, and he described a wet dog. For those of you that have got wet dogs or dogs that have got lots and lots of fur that have just come out of a puddle or out of a brook or out of a lake, and they stand there and they start shaking, all that water goes everywhere. So everybody gets a bit. So I had to laugh when he was describing that, because I then followed him onto the podium and said, I am that wet dog. I will shake my positivity wherever I can. Even when it's draining me, I will remain positive. And I got really nice feedback from him. And I think I tweeted that getting that feedback was like getting a Paul Hollywood handshake in the Great British Bake Off.
For anyone who doesn't know, so Hugh McCorkey is the Director of Improvement at NHS England and NHS Improvement. And he and Jane both spoke at our summit, which was a year ago, just over a year ago now. It feels quite strange that it was so long ago. I will put a link, so all of the recordings of the presentations from that summit are on Future NHS. So if anyone wants to watch Hugh and Jane talk about that wet dog phenomenon, Which is absolutely true. There's some people can like shake off what they're feeling and it hits others and kind of it just passes on. And it's a lovely kind of interaction between the two of them. So I would encourage you to have a look if you're interested. And I think if getting that positive and engaging energy is what you're after, yeah, it's a really great kind of example of that. Right, Paul, can I just check if there are any questions for us waiting that people are wanting answers to? Okay, so there's a few here.
Will there be an extra session for how to schmooze by Jane?
Oh, they're anonymous. I can't invite them. It is, as I said, I spent the early part of my growing up not in the NHS and in retail. And retail at the time was a very male-dominated profession, especially the retail that I was in, which was brown and grey goods, which is TVs and computers. So you had to be a little bit different and a little bit special to get onto the leaderboard for these sales leagues. So yeah, I learned to schmooze, and it is using specific language to make people feel valued and engaged. And it worked so well that when I moved and lived in Devon for a short while, I actually had customers travel from Northamptonshire to Devon to buy their goods. It was a nightmare for me because we had to use different regional distribution centres, but yeah, they wouldn't buy off anybody else. So it's about schmoozing, but making sure that your integrity is in place as well, and making sure that those people, those clinicians, they're always bombarded by people saying, you need to improve your service, you need to improve your service. We're not hitting this target, we're not hitting that financial target, we're budgets, we're this, we're that. Consultants like to talk about the people that they're treating. And that is the easiest thing. If you go in there and say, I'd like to show you some stuff about your patients, and how can you help us improve on what we found? Because they like to be involved, they really do. So it's using their language, definitely.
Thank you so much, Jane, for joining us today. And yeah, if people want to hear more of Jane, do watch the session from the summit. It was great. And there's actually a few of the speakers from this that you might see are familiar from that summit as well. So do have a look. I'll post the link in a minute into the chat box. For those of you who've got to go, can I please ask that you fill in the evaluation form before you go? Paul, are you able to just pop it into the chat box for everybody? Please do let us know what you think. We're constantly updating and improving what we offer, but we can only do that if you let us know what you need. So do please fill that in. It's really, really quick and it won't take you very long. If any of this has prompted more questions, and as I said, you want to know how it applies to your particular service or your particular project, do feel free to sign up for the mentoring sessions. They're there to support you, and we can go into a lot more detail in terms of what this means for you and how it works for you in those sessions. But I just want to say a massive thank you to Jane for joining us and for sharing some of your wet dog enthusiasm, and thank you for everyone who's dialed in today. And we can answer any questions that come up later if people are interested. Also, do feel free to put questions on future NHS. So if something occurs to you afterwards that you think, well, I should ask about that, do pop it on there, and I'm sure I can pass questions along to Jane as well if anything comes in.
Absolutely. I think you've got my details. So if there's any specifics, then please, pass on my details. Always happy to help. It's part of what we sign up for when we become demand and capacity trainers, is to support and help where we can. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you everyone for coming today. I'll let you get back to your days, and we'll see you next week when we look at specifically how to model in the COVID context. So taking this theory and applying it